The heat in the market didn't behave like a season. It behaved like a rule. Under tarps bleached thin as old prayer flags, the air sagged and stuck. Flies practiced straight lines. Radios leaked songs from other lives. Bananas stacked like small moons. Mangoes slept with their own perfume. Somewhere, a woman boiled sugar and peanuts until the sweetness turned brittle and hopeful. Amara shifted the boy's weight on her hip and felt the familiar pull, a handspan of ache that had its own calendar. Ikenna patted her collarbone, inquisitive. He made a vowel sound that might have been contentment or complaint. 9 months, and each day he learned a new way to name hunger. She packed the day onto the table. Peel here, cut there, pile, price, repeat. The bananas were good. Hers always were. She pressed a thumb into one green-gold curve and felt the exact give. If the market had judges, they would nod. If the market had applause, it would sound like small coins. Someone's car idled at the curb, not just a car, a length of shadow with glass. When doors sighed and men stepped out, the stallholders looked away and also looked exactly enough to understand where to place their eyes. Money makes a curriculum. People learn. He stepped out last. He let the heat consider him without touching him. Tall, yes, but height is a trick. What mattered was the way the space made room for him without asking. He walked like a man with calendars that moved when he moved. Amara did not widen her eyes. She didn't let her mouth betray even the smallest oval, but the small muscles along her jaw put their hands against the door, as if someone had knocked. He reached for a banana, not asking, and peeled it with the careful greed of a man who owns ripeness. He took a bite. The driver lifted a note. The man lifted a finger. The driver put the money away. He wasn't here to purchase fruit. He was here to make a shape around a problem. Only then did he look at the boy. The look wasn't theatrical. He was not the type to perform a startle. He was the type to register, to mark, to file. And there it was, the careful tilt of the ear, the patient brown of the eye, the way the lashes stood up like small, polite fences. The boy met him gaze for gaze as if two mirrors faced each other and produced a slow corridor of selves. Amara, he said, a name laid down like a card you know will win the hand. Sir, she answered. Her voice stayed calm. Calm is a small wardrobe you can wear through many seasons. You sell fruit now. I sell what people eat. And the child, my son, he set his teeth lightly into the banana again, then lowered it. He has my father's ears, he offered, casual, almost amused by his own play. It was a joke you could walk away from if necessary. He never told a joke he couldn't abandon. Do you want fruit? She asked. She shifted the boy's weight with the gentleness of someone who practices. The boy's fingers found the cord of her shoulder and learned it like a string. Bananas, he said, and a name she didn't answer. Silence is a rope. If you hold it, you can feel the other person's weight on the other end. He looked past her to the fruit, to the top, to the ground that would become paperwork if he decided it should. How old? 9 months. Numbers did the rest. They always did for him. Arithmetic was a kingdom with obedient borders. He touched the boy's cheek with one knuckle. The boy leaned into the softness of the knuckle, curious about temperature, about small kindness. Amara turned her shoulder to block the contact, as if changing the weather. Don't touch him. He nodded. He had learned, very early, that the shortest distance between 2 points was compliance in the moment and pressure in the margins. He folded money onto the crate. Not just cost, gesture. Gesture has a price. In some neighborhoods, it's higher than rent. You told the house manager to have me escorted, Amara said, because the money required a counterweight. You chose silence on my behalf and called it discretion. He didn't let the smile. People talk, he said. 10 women in one house will weave a rumor into a net, and some days I am a fish. I do not like being a fish. I kept quiet, she said. And you will again, he replied, as if making a weather report. He gave the driver a small gesture. The car accepted him again like a body that knows its owner. Air closed. The stall stretched back into itself. Amara looked down at the money he'd left. It was new money, slippery, arrogant. She stacked it under the crate and put her foot there, not because anyone would steal it, but because holding the weight steadied her. Ikenna slept against her. She stroked his hair, which kinked into stubborn commas, and thought of what came next. She had a way of staring at the future until it put on flesh. He had a talent for quiet, not silence. Silence is a room you enter. Quiet is something you do while moving. He did it now, behind glass and air conditioning. He named his wants in the language of calendars and compliance. Vaccination drive at the market. He told the head of security, children first, no uniforms, no heavy hands, cheery posters with animals. Yes sir. Swab anything you can swab without a court scolding me. Consent forms, clipboards, smiles. We don't need blood. We need numbers. Samples will be routed, he said. You know the lab. He did not enjoy the cheat. He did not particularly dislike it either. Enjoyment was an inefficient engine. He preferred gears things that turned other things. The paper came back and said what Miros had already said. He folded the paper into a drawer. He didn't require it to feel true. He required it to proceed. He sent an inspector to the market to count the distance between stalls and shadows, to measure the width of mercy in millimeters. The inspector returned with numbers that made the market thinner, narrower, more flammable. He sent a clerk with a right smile to explain a lease that was the ghost of a lease. Owned by a shell, owned by another shell, owned by a trust that had his signature tucked into its ribs like a secret. On the third day he sent himself again, because sometimes presence is the only language a person believes. You can hate me in a place with cold air, he said from the curb, opening the car door. There is also tea. I will not go to your tower, she said, with the calm of a person who had packed her life in the dark once already. You will bring the child, he told her, or I will arrive with papers that will enter your home before I do. I'm not threatening. I am predicting. I am very good at predictions. Something in the jaw again, that little quake. She got into the car. He did not watch the boy. He watched her reflection in the window as the city passed, a face with its own currency. His office wore its wealth like skin, unapologetic and maintained. Glass framed other glass. The city outside imitated obedience. He poured tea into cups that claimed a history they did not actually have. She stayed standing. The boy slept, mouth slack, a soft leak of breath. Paperwork. He slid a folder. It acknowledges what is true and makes provision for what the future insists. Housing stipend, schooling later, medical care, now. Guardianship guidelines. In the event of your death, her eyes flicked up. Or your absence, he conceded. Or an emergency. Or language we can write that means the word I am not writing. Who chooses, she asked. I do, he said. This is my only skill. You have many. He set one fingertip to the table and drew a small circle in the varnish, then stopped. Control is the only one I trust. The boy woke like a candle lifts its head to a match. He reached for the silver pen. The man switched it for a wooden toy. Sleight of hand, but the boy only wanted something that turned. The wheel turned. Satisfaction is a small god. Children worship properly. You will ruin me, she said, and she wasn't pleading. She was annotating the ledger in the margin where it would be seen forever. Ruin is dramatic, he said. I will rearrange. That's quieter. He did not push the pen into her hand. He did not hurry. Pressure is effective when it wears the right clothes. He called licensing. He called charity. He called marketing. He made kindnesses that became corridors. On the fifth day she appeared with a folder in her bag that smelled like old paper and hands. She signed each page with a neatness that felt like violence. He countersigned with a pen taught to behave. Keys, he told the assistant. Folder B. The assistant, a precise woman with bracelets that kept their own time, brought a small gold ring of brass and the designation on file. She asked, Ms. Amara will be listed as Ms. Amara. His voice didn't prettify the rebuke. It simply placed it in the air, where it would hang until it learned manners. He walked them to the elevator. For 1/2 second, he knelt and offered the toy again. The boy took it solemnly, as if accepting an office. I will take him on Thursdays, he said. No overnights. Not yet. You will do as you like, she said. He didn't disagree. Thursdays were a private season. He dressed them like rituals, because rituals make people believe they are not improvising. The driver learned the route that avoided cameras. The receptionist learned to look away. The elevator learned a new habit. Go straight to the floor where the air is thick with varnish and the toys are algorithms disguised as wood. He learned that the boy preferred the car with the blue roof to the car with the red roof. He learned that strawberries were destructive joy. He learned that when the boy concentrated, his mouth made a small O that looked like an unpunctuated question. He did not hold him for long stretches. He did not coo. He did not ask for kisses. He allowed the child to orbit within the gravity of a room built for him, and allowed himself the observation. The boy catalogued everything the way he himself catalogued leverage. Amara sat in a chair in the corner and counted exits. Her eyes watched the edges, the places where a thing might enter or leave. Once she said, "He will know me in any crowd." He will, he said. He meant, until rooms teach him other ways to know. He called this progress. He called this discipline. He did not name the softening at the center of his chest, because naming things in yourself gives them rights. He was not always a man who made rooms behave. He had been a boy who learned the names of disappointment and debt in the same week, a father who had ears that tilted forward as if listening too hard, a mother who wore good shoes too long, a school that worshipped tests, a first deal with a man who believed in contracts written on napkins, a second deal with a woman who didn't believe in contracts at all. He learned to never be the surprise in a room. He learned to be the weather. Weather is permitted everywhere. That night with Amara had not even been a night, not if night implies moon and sentiment. It had been a dismount from a party. Air smell of limes and ice, kitchen smell of candied starfruit and bleach. Her hands folded, her body holding its grief, the way careful people hold breakable things, against the chest. Without spectacle, there are mistakes that feel like falling, and mistakes that feel like stepping down from a curb you misjudged. This had been a curb. He had not stumbled. He had simply adjusted his weight. He would not call it a regret. Regret assumes you believe in alternate universes. He believed in roads that lead to where they lead. The apartment he arranged for Amara had floors that did not complain and windows that removed the city and left only light. The kitchen had a red pot that pretended to be French. The bedroom had a bed that forgave the body. The closet had space that made women into collections. She moved through it as if it were a museum. She used only one plate. She folded the towels as if someone might judge. She sat with the boy on the carpet where the afternoon made a bright square, and taught him the names of things that could be named without losing their souls. Ball, wheel, book, spoon. She did not teach him father. She allowed the world to teach that one from the outside in. On Thursdays, she packed a small bag with bananas and a cloth and a change of shirt. She rode elevators that hummed like things that were not alive, but wished to imitate it. She watched him step into rooms where toys had opinions. When she lay down at night, she arranged her body around the boy and made herself into a border. Borders are not the same as walls. Borders admit green cards and a certain level of trickery. Walls are for siege. She did not plan a siege. She planned a long resistance. He had a foundation. It was not a vanity, as some said. It was a device. He used it to arrange optics, to purchase narratives on credit. The school opened with cameras. Smiling, he spoke with commas that allowed applause. He said the word future without flinching. He said children as if the syllables might fit into his throat without getting stuck. He did not say son. He did not say maid. He did not say accident. There was a photograph of hands passing books, one hand pale with office light, one hand brown with market sun. No faces. Faces conflict. Hands simply agree to carry what they carry. The boy attended for an afternoon the week after, not as a student but as a rehearsal. He clapped when someone played a drum. He dropped a block and watched gravity confirm itself. He cried once, hard, a brief knife of unpleasant honesty, and stopped when the wooden wheel rolled back toward his wrist, as if apologizing. The cameras stayed away. Agreements had been signed. The building learned a new etiquette. Money's discretion is its own species of silence. A rumor started anyway. Rumors are spores. They float and wait for damp. This one began in the mouth of the house manager who had escorted Amara to the gate the first time. It drifted to a stylist's studio, snagged in a tangle of hair and hairspray and confidences. It traveled by car where secrets like to ride. That small bubble of confessional air between two people who know where the doors lock. It found its way to a journalist who liked nouns and verbs and consequences. He managed the rumor the way he managed everything. He bought the damp. The stylist found her lease renegotiated in her favor. The journalist found his editor suddenly in love with other stories. The house manager found a promotion in a different city with colder winters and good schools, and took it with relief like anesthesia. He did not press hard. There were no broken fingers. There were no threats that would look good in a movie. It was all temperature. He warmed the right rooms, and the rumor wilted like cut lettuce. He went home to a house where the polished tables could see their own. faces and poured a glass of water that tasted like nothing. He stood at the window until the city pretended to be the stars. The boy ran a fever. Of course he did. Children conspire with microbes to remind adults that plants are animals with their own appetites. At 2 in the morning, the boy's skin felt like someone had ironed a shirt on him. He cried in a way that reordered the bones of the night. Amara tried the clinic downstairs, which bent its hours for tenants with certain key fobs. The doctor on call was a gentlewoman with eyes that had learned to rest in grief and not fall through. She said the right words about hydration and patience. She gave paracetamol without condescension. The fever kept itself. At 3, Amara called the number she was not supposed to call except for legal emergencies. She did not apologize. She said, "He is very hot." The car arrived with the inevitability of morning. The hospital was white, where other places only pretend. He appeared in a hallway, as if the hallway had grown him. He took the boy in his arms without announcing the taking. The boy pressed his forehead to his collarbone and softened there like melted wax. "Bring pediatrics down," he told the nurse, who tried to explain hierarchy to him. He had never enjoyed the architecture of deference when it was built by someone else. "I can't," she began. "You can," he corrected, "if you would like the new wing to arrive on schedule." He did not yell. He did not need to. Volume is for men who have to prove they are present. Doctors arrived, sleepy and professional. The fever was a fever, which is to say, a demonstration of being alive. IVs pretended strength. The boy slept by decree. Amara sat with her hands on her knees, palms up, as if she had been arrested. He stood with his hands in his pockets, which was where he kept a part of him that once knew the price of milk. At dawn, the boy's temperature returned to a number. That did not make strangers pray in elevators. They discharged him into a world that did not change because a child had been briefly almost a story. In the car, the boy slept with his mouth open, a slick coin of drool at the corner. The man looked at it, then at the window, then at nothing. The way men look when something remembered knocks on the door and you pretend you didn't hear. "Thank you," Amara said, neutral. "Of course," he said. He meant, "I will always pay the ransom when the problem is time." He began to send things that were not exactly gifts. A stroller with wheels that believed themselves aircraft. A humidifier that turned the room into a little weather. A crib that adjusted itself in the night, the way an attentive lover does. Boxes arrived like polite announcements. She returned what she could return without making a scene that would cost her later. She kept what she would have purchased anyway if the world had made her someone else. Sometimes she stood in the middle of the apartment and looked at the thing and tried to decide if it made her angrier in the way that sharpens or angrier in the way that dulls. He tracked none of it. He had people for tracking. He had dashboards that could tell him about the airflow in warehouses he would never visit. He did not need to know where a crib sat. He only needed to know that the world grew more like him in ways that would be difficult to reverse. He called the boy by his given name when they were alone, Ikenna. He liked the weight of it. It made his mouth perform a shape that wasn't purely the language of his boardrooms. He did not test the other names he could have given. He was not a man who said son casually. He understood that words are deeds. In meetings he began to move appointments that would keep him past 4 on Thursdays. He did not explain. The assistant grew skilled at reallocating expectation. He did not say to anyone in his circle, men who spoke fluent equity, that there was a small person who moved a lever under the desk of his life. If asked, he would have denied that sentiment was involved. It wasn't sentiment, it was geometry. The boy was a vector. He adjusted outcomes. On the 18th floor, across from Amaris, lived a woman who composed music for films that needed to persuade you to cry at the right minute. Her walls were thin in the way expensive walls are thin, acoustically engineered to allow certain parts of life through and keep others out. She heard the boys' morning dialogues with toys. She heard the afternoon hush. She heard Thursdays because Thursdays had a different weight in the hallway air. She became polite to Amara in the elevator, in the way artists are polite to people who might be protagonists. She never asked questions whose answers would put anyone in danger. She sometimes left soup outside the door in a container with a lid that feared no dishwasher. Once, late, she heard a conversation. A man's voice, low and even. A woman's voice, even lower, even more even. Names were not said. Sentences were the kind that could be placed in a drawer and labeled when we did what we had to. The neighbor wrote a melody that night in C minor and sold it. 2 weeks later to a director who called it the sound of compromise. A magazine did a profile. They always did. It was the man who built a future, or the future the man built, or some variation. Photographs of him with his chin resting on his hand, like thought was a posture. Phrases about vision, anecdotes about poor beginnings that felt like they had been practiced on sound stages. He allowed it because narratives clean the air where capital lives. The magazine asked for a photograph with a child because this was a season where men who owned the future also needed to appear capable of not breaking small things. He offered a school. He offered a classroom without children. He offered a stack of books and 2 sanitized hands. He did not offer acne. The article appeared with a headline that treated him like weather. The photograph pretended the city had hands. No one he cared about objected. Someone he didn't know wrote online that his eyes looked like those of a person who made plans for people and called it generosity. There had been a first woman, once, in the way that people with large lives have firsts that don't know their place in the census. She had wanted nouns, wife, mother, home. He had wanted verbs, secure, expand, arrange. They had been faithful to their words and so failed each other. She married a man who loved nouns. He bought a building and named it after an adjective. She heard a rumor everyone does at the right altitude. She sent him a message that was just a question mark. He replied with nothing. She replied with a photograph of a lemon tree they had once tried to keep alive on a balcony, where the wind preferred to tell different stories. The tree had died. The photograph was of the wire frame they had used to keep it upright, empty of greenness. He looked at it, felt nothing that could interfere with his day, and then felt something quiet come and sit beside his afternoon. She did not try to warn Amara. It was not her job. She had learned about jobs the hard way. Da is a syllable children make without meaning father. It is a consonant that feels like a door. When Akana said it, Amara did not stiffen. She did not translate it into anything dangerous. She set a banana on the table and said, "Yes, that is for you." He laughed at the trick she made of sound. Later in the tower, he held up the wooden car. "Car," he said. "Wheel." He waited. Children perform in front of waiting. Ikena produced sound. "Not car, not wheel." "Light," the boy said, pointing at the window the way a child points at God when no one has told him God already belongs to someone else. He looked out at the city reflecting itself in other glass. "Yes," he said carefully. "Light." He did not ask the boy to say dad. He did not need to possess the mouth of a child to know what he was. Ownership has gradations. He owned the day. That was enough. Amara kept the stall even after the apartment. Not every day. Enough. The market had a ledger that included her. Women paid in gossip and receipts. Men paid in coins and, sometimes, small respect. Keeping the stall was a way to remain mathematically possible to herself. He did not try to take the stall away again. He had already bought the corner. Buying it twice would have been untidy. He had learned tidiness from a father who built wooden shelves in a crooked house and made them level by will alone. On a day when the heat chose mercy, he passed by in the long, low car with an investor who laughed like he had teeth everywhere. He lifted 2 fingers. It wasn't a wave. It was an acknowledgement that a world can contain 2 truths that do not cancel. A mother selling fruit, a man arranging flights for jet engines. The boy, in the back seat, pressed his fingers to glass and learned the temperature of separation. The investor said, "You'll miss your turn." "I already owned the corner," he said. The window closed without a sound. A lawyer from a small firm sent a letter. It was precise and sentimental, the worst combination. It suggested a class action. It suggested a press conference. It suggested that the market had rights. A friend of a friend had told Amara to sign her name, to allow her story to be fertilizer for other people's plants. She did not sign. He did not call her to ask her not to. He did not need to. He called the landlord of the building where the lawyer's firm rented 2 rooms with 1 window. He arranged a renovation that took too long. He arranged a temporary office that was bigger than the old one. He arranged, by accident, a happiness the lawyer interpreted as a reward for courage. The letter was never sent again. Amara kept a notebook in the drawer with the tea. She wrote things like, "If he takes Thursdays, I take Mondays. If he gives toys, I keep names. If the world decides without me, I make my own small decisions until they add up to a wall you can lean your head against." She wrote, "If he says guardianship in an emergency, I will outlive emergencies." She wrote, "If the boy learns rooms, he will also learn streets." She wrote, "If he becomes story, I will be the person who tells it in a voice that does not apologize and does not accuse." The notebook had grease on it from the stall. Bananas leave smudges that look like fingerprints. She liked that he believed in islands the way other people believed in saints. He went to one when men like him needed to be seen without being seen. He took meetings by a pool that pretended to be an ocean. He wore shirts that cost enough to call themselves shirts out loud. He watched other men well. They watched him back with the respect of people who would lend each other a shovel and then never discuss what it had moved. On the third day, he saw a little boy with ears that tilted. A stranger's child. The boy shouted with his whole spine. The nanny shushed in 2 languages. The sound traveled through the air like memory. He ordered another coffee he didn't need and changed his flight to Thursday morning. Thursday again. The elevator again. The boy again. And the wooden wheel. And Amara's silence that behaved like a country with a strong border but a friendly visa policy. School interviews, he said, casual. Not this year. The year after. Documents. Documents for what? She asked. Belonging, he said. Belonging has paperwork. He belongs to me, she said, not loud, which is its own volume. He belongs to the world, he said. We can pick which parts. She watched the boy line up the wheels. Children make order until someone teaches them about taste. Pick gently, she said. Pick like a person who knows how to hold fruit. He thought of his father's hands, the splinters, the way he sanded wood with a patience that cheated time. I do, he said. She said nothing. Not all truths can be said twice. There is a photograph that does not exist. In it, Amara sits on the floor with the boy. He stands, one hand on her knee for balance, the other reaching for something just out of frame. The light from the window makes a clean square across the carpet. The square cuts through their bodies like a quiet idea. Her face is turned, half away. His mouth is open, a laugh swallowed mid-flight. He stands in the doorway, eyes tired in the way eyes get when a person has done a whole day of not being seen and then is seen. He is not in the frame. That is the point. The photograph does not exist because there was no camera, because the neighbor across the hall does not photograph strangers, because the assistant who would have known to lift a phone did not come in that day, having learned to respect a room with a child in it. Still, the photograph sits untaken in the part of the world where untaken things wait. It will never become evidence. It will never become leverage. It will never be printed in a magazine that pretends it loves humanity as much as it loves the smell of ink. Come to the house, he said one Thursday, as if inviting someone to an event that already happened. Sundays, there's a garden. He must learn corners that aren't made by streets. Amara arranged her face into the expression that keeps women safe. Which door would we use? The side, he said, but not the servants' door that does not have a name, and I will sit where? In the garden, he said, shaded. There's a tree that looks serious and is not, and who will be there? No one, he promised, or everyone, and none of them will matter. She did not answer. She understood invitations to the house. They are not casual. They are borders drawn as if with air, but that stone remembers. She went, not the next Sunday, but the one after, because it is important to move on your own day. The tree in the garden wore itself like a crown. The boy ran in a way that suggested the grass had been waiting all week to do its job. He watched, from a chair that had arms like promises. He looked at them as if they were the answer to a problem he had not yet asked. Someone else came to the garden later. A woman with a red mouth that respected no one's notions of subtlety. She worked at a fund that worked at countries the way men work at cars, confident looking under the hood, uninterested in the smell of oil as long as engines turned. She watched the boy with curiosity she almost disguised. She watched Amara with curiosity she did not bother to hide. And who are you? She asked, charming as a scalpel. Miss Amara, he said from his chair. Ah, said Redmouth. And the boy, Amara said. She gave the smile that keeps storms from forming. Redmouth laughed, because she liked women who could be weathered too. She turned to him. You do surprises now. I do arrangements, he said. Redmouth nodded as if she had always known his heart was a carefully calibrated room. She changed the subject to bonds and drew a picture in the air with her finger that made dusk seem like a spreadsheet. Amara watched the air change. She added the woman to her notebook under weather warning. A fire alarm can be a mistake or a test. This one was neither. It was a kitchen small disaster in a house where the kitchen belonged to people without names. Smoke-found corridors. The architect had not planned. The boy heard the sound and did what children do at volume. He needed to be taught not to be afraid by someone whose heartbeat was familiar. Amara stood and reached, but he was faster. He picked the child up and made the decision all fathers make in emergencies: which door and how fast. He carried the boy through a room that did not like to be used quickly. Outside, under the serious tree, the air made its first argument for night. The boy quieted, listening to his chest for the same rhythm he had heard in the hospital in the hours between 3 and being okay. He found it and nodded against it. A little agreement. Amara came out with the neighbor from the 18th floor, scanning for fire in a professional key. The staff came out, counting heads. Red Mouth stood in the grass with her shoes in her hand and her face lit by amusement, as if the whole thing had been staged for her entertainment. He looked at Amara over the boy's head. She looked back. There are truces that last the length of a siren. When the alarm stopped, the truce folded itself neatly and went back to its drawer. He called his lawyer and said, "It's time to revise the trust, for the foundation, for the child." The lawyer, who had a face like a well-read novel, said nothing that would be quoted later, and wrote everything. He added lines that made Thursdays into law. He added lines that made emergencies into opportunity for certain kinds of control. He added lines about education and exemptions and the smell of certain rooms. He did not add the word love. It is not a word that performs consistently in court. He sent a copy to Amara. He did not ask for opinion. He did not ask for signatures. He asked for acknowledgement. She sent a message back that said, "Acknowledged." She added a note to her notebook. He believes in paper more than people. Use paper. He threw a party to impress men who wore watches that glowed like small planets. Music that made promises. Lights, quick as bees. Laughter from people who know. Laughter is a threat deterred by practice. Somewhere in the middle of it, the boy woke from a nap he had been delivered into by a woman paid to be kind. He wandered to a stair where he could see the bees. He made a sound that wasn't fear, not exactly. It was a question about scale. Amara moved to collect him and collided with Red Mouth by accident or design. Red Mouth steadied her. Their eyes met like two countries testing the border. Red Mouth said, "Careful," but she said it like a person who admires other people's balance. He appeared at the top of the stair, because stairs are places where men like him must appear to keep a house believing. He lifted the boy. The room watched and pretended not to. He handed the boy to Amara without flourish. The handover was clean, a small theater that advertised competence. Later, Red Mouth said into his ear, "If you have a son, one day he will have a choice. He will be the weather or the person with the umbrella." He said, "He will be the person who builds the roof." Red Mouth laughed, delighted by hubris that dressed itself as architecture. He went to see his father because paperwork made it necessary. The old man's ears still tilted forward like they wanted to catch the next sentence and hold it. The house smelled like wooden things that forgive you. "I heard a rumor," his father said without blame. "Is there a boy who will carry your name when your shoulders need rest?" "There is a boy," he said. "He will carry what I give him." "And his mother?" "She is weather that does not break," he said. The father nodded, as if that were the best compliment he had heard since the day a man with hands softer than his own had paid in cash for a shelf he'd built level in a crooked room. "Bring them," the father said, and did not insist. He was not that kind of father. He had long ago learned to let his son test gravity on his own terms. He did not bring them. Some rooms complicate lines that must remain straight in certain ledgers. A school play approach that was not a play so much as a collective demonstration of stage fright and patience. The children wore paper hats. The parents took photographs of the idea of childhood. He sat 3 rows back, anonymous in a suit. That let him disappear among men who wore their fatigue like badges. He watched Ikenna stand at the edge of a group and decide whether or not to sing. He decided not to. Instead, he looked for Amara in the crowd and, finding her, smiled with his whole body as if he had just found gravity again. The room made a sound that grown-ups make when something unarranged arranges them. He did not move. He put his hands together once, the way he did when a presentation hit the mark. After, in the corridor that smelled like paste and paper, the teacher said, "He's very observant." It is the compliment teachers give to children who are architecturally careful. He nodded as if the teacher had confirmed a figure on a spreadsheet. Amara asked for something. She did not ask the man, she asked the world by naming it. A passport, she said in the office with the tea. For him, you are not planning to leave, he said. Not a question. I am planning to have options. He looked at the paper in his head, where options lived. Options are expensive. He did not like paying for other people's options. Yes, he said, we will arrange it. It will be a certain kind of passport that opens certain doors and closes none. Passports do not close doors, she said. People do. He did not argue because they were both right. And arguing with someone who is also right is an art for which he had no time. In a season that called itself winter but performed temperature badly, the boy coughed again. This time it was not a crisis. The clinic downstairs dealt with it with measured kindness. She bought oranges and cut them into ships. He attended a meeting where a man used the phrase burn rate and spoke as if money were fire and he were a careful forest. Thursdays continued. The wheel turned. The toy broke and was replaced. The photographs that were not taken piled up on the invisible table of days. He aged by an inch behind the eyes. She learned to sleep while listening with one ear. The boy learned to give back small objects without believing he had lost them. He called one night not. His habitant said, "Do you need anything?" He meant it like a man who had been told by a distant satellite that kindness increases compliance by 5%. He also meant it like a person who had felt, twice that day, the sensation of air leaving a room he was in and did not enjoy it. Amara said, "We are fine." She meant, "I will tell you when I need to." She meant, "You will know already because you have arranged it." She meant, "It is not safe for either of us if I teach you that answering this question for me is a pleasure." "You want again," he said. "Good." He said it like a line item reconciled. He slept with the lights off and woke with the city back in place. Some days the fruit has its own schedule. The sun holds a grudge. The bananas turn sweet in a hurry. Amara discounted bowls and called on women who cooked for other people's houses. She texted the neighbor with the music about banana bread. She took Ikena to the apartment and made an afternoon of peel and mash and oven. He called, unfashionably, to say a meeting ran long. She said, "It is not Thursday." He said, "No," and stopped, because he could not explain why he wanted to hear a small voice say light. She hung up kindly. The oven clicked off. The bread came out like a good decision. She saved a piece for him and then threw it away because the gesture annoyed her when she looked at it in the light. A man in a tie who worked for a place that homeschooled money came with a proposition, a fund for education that would earn. While it learned, he referenced returns that behaved politely. He mentioned the boy once, delicately, the way people mention an heirloom when they are trying to sell you a safe. He sent the man away with a smile that was not a yes. He called his actual advisor, who did not wear a tie and did not like being called an advisor. They laughed about the man with the fund and then did the same thing with different words. He sent a note to Amara. "Paper has been filed for him." She wrote back, "Which paper?" He replied, "The kind that makes numbers behave when he is older." She wrote, "Numbers will behave for him because he will behave for himself." He did not reply because there are times when watching someone be wrong in a beautiful way is almost like prayer. They were in the garden again. The serious tree had learned to be funny. The boy had learned to run without falling, except when falling was the fastest way to sit. "What do you call him?" Redmouth asked, appearing like a kind of season. "Ikena," Amara said. She looked at the woman the way you look at a horizon you might have to learn later. Redmouth rolled the name in her mouth as if checking. "For stones. Strong," she said. "Useful." She turned to him. "Do you ever say it?" "Yes," he said. "And how does it feel?" "Like a key," he said. Redmouth smiled because she approved of metaphors that are also strategies. On a street where traffic performs improvisation, a motorcycle played a single wrong note. The driver's instinct was good, but his timing was human. The car learned fear for the first time in its manufactured life and bled plastic. The boy's car seat did its job like a soldier. He was not in the car. He came when called. He took photographs with his eyes. He said to the driver, "Go to the hospital," and to security, "Find the man whose motorcycle forgot its lessons and teach him new ones, legal ones." He called Amara himself and said, "He is fine. He is also afraid." She arrived with a wave of air, like someone opening a door with the weather behind it. The boy pressed his face into her neck and inhaled a geography he trusted. He watched the hand on the back of the child's head. He watched the small pat dot. He thought of his mother and her good shoes and how she had patted his head like that. When the first business failed, and he had pretended not to notice, he did not weep. Some men weep, he adjusts. The house learned. Them, houses do. Senses grew accustomed to their breathing. The floorboards chose their creak for them and kept it. The refrigerator started to keep the right things without being told. A staff member learned the exact way Amara liked tea when she was pretending not to like anything in the house. Another learned that the boy would always try to open the bottom right drawer of anything. Redmouth learned too, but differently. She learned the loop of Thursdays. She learned the shape of the garden with 3 bodies in it. She learned her own position in a triangle she had not chosen to draw. She gave it a name in her head, then took the name away, because names harden things. Your child bit another. Child, the woman on the phone said, apologetic as a person who has to speak to a man whose calendars moved the sky. Whose child? He said. And then, yes, ours. The hours surprised him. The woman on the phone did not notice, or noticed and added it to the file she kept in her mind, about him that she would take out later and read to her sister for entertainment. He asked sensible questions about tetanus and apologies. He called Amara. She said, he is small and practicing teeth. He said, yes. He did not ask if he could still have Thursday. He simply arrived and found a mouth with a small crescent of consequence near the corner, the pink fading like a rumor. He touched the air near the bruise and did not touch the bruise. He said, we use teeth for fruit, and the boy considered this, as if teeth had a union with rules. The passport arrived fed by couriers who knew when to move through the city like fog. Amara held it like a photograph of a future. She put it in the notebook drawer next to the grease. She did not tell him. He knew. He did not mention that he knew. This is how grown-ups love, by collecting evidence and sparing each other the trial. In the hallway, music came through like a well-behaved ghost. Amara held the boy and swayed the way women sway when they want to teach timing. The song had C minor at its heart. It had the sound of compromise built into its chord changes. He stood at his own door for a long time, not knocking. He listened to the song as if it were asking him a question. He did not answer. He did not move. He was a man who had learned how not to move without appearing to stand still. Endings in lives like this are mile markers misread as walls. There is no wall. There is a long road, and sometimes a sudden turn. He kept Thursdays. He kept the trust in order. He kept the rumor asleep. He kept the house stocked with fruit cut into acceptable shapes by people who learned the knife the way you learn a language. Amara kept the stall in weather that pretended at mercy. She kept the apartment clean like a promise. She kept the boy taught in 2 vocabularies, wheel and road, light and switch, fruit and gift, name and silence. Redmouth kept herself available to the version of his life that would include a woman who liked to stand at the edge of gardens and measure wind. She allowed him to imagine arrangements. She allowed herself to not care, and then to care, and then to pretend this was a species of power. The boy kept learning. He learned the alphabet of control and the grammar of resistance. He learned to look for his mother in crowded rooms and for his father in quiet ones. He learned that some days the weather is a person. One day, not a Thursday, he stood in front of the serious tree that had become a joke and said, light, not pointing at the sky but at the window of the house. He had learned there are lights that are not the sun. He had learned there are suns you can turn off. The man looked at him and nodded, as if his son had just made the correct decision in a meeting. Amara looked at him and nodded, as if he had just noticed the obvious. The tree did not nod. Trees don't, they survive. And so it continued, because continuation is what power buys when it cannot buy happiness. No villain fell. No hero rose. A man arranged. A woman persisted. A boy observed, and then became. The bananas ripened on time. The market remained a rule. The city rehearsed light in glass. Everything and nothing resolved. If you insisted on numbers, the stipend covered exactly the cost of a small life not being hungry. The trust grew at a rate that made spreadsheets smile modestly. The Thursdays added up until they became a fraction of a childhood. The passport admitted 3 countries without argument, and 5 with polite questioning. If you insisted on morality, you would not find it here. There were only choices and their shadows. If you insisted on an ending, picture a table with tea, a wooden wheel, a passport in a drawer that smells like bananas, and a man who believes in islands learning the edge of a mainland called father. And if you insisted on love, you may find it, but it will look like control practiced gently. like resistance that does not break the plate it is served on, like a child pointing at light, while two adults do the math and call it mercy.